We've invited the candidates to bring a 1-minute opening statement, and we have urged them to focus their time on letting the constituents, you all, know who they are, what has motivated them to stand to represent Southend and Leigh in the Westminster Parliament, and what primary policies they are particularly proud of. But ultimately, it is up to them how they use that minute. So again, in alphabetical order by party, let me invite Anna Firth of the Conservative Party to give her opening statement. Thank you, Anna.
Fine. Well, good evening, everyone. It's been the pleasure and the privilege of my life to represent you in Parliament since my election. Nobody could replace Sir David, but I have loved rising to the challenge. I've focused on 3 key issues: upgrading our hospital, making our streets safer, and improving our city. You'll remember the terrible situation at the hospital with ambulances when I was first elected. I'm really proud that working with the hospital, we now have the best ambulance waiting times in the region. And that's alongside a brand new upgraded A&E under construction and £110 million finally coming into our local NHS. I've also banned nitrous oxide and closed a loophole regarding zombie knives to keep our streets safer, and pushed Anglian Water to make a £104 million investment to clean up our beaches and our sea. Thank you.
It's never easy going first. Thank you for keeping to your time. Tilly, would you come and join us? Tilly Hogrebe from the Green Party.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Tilly Hogrebe, and I'm the candidate for the Green Party, and I am a local resident here in the constituency. I've been for about 15 years with my family, and I'm an active member of our wonderful community. I stand for building connected and caring and fair communities throughout the country. We live in a world where people are used to only looking after their own interests, and for many this is not a matter of choice, because if you don't know how to feed your children or how to pay your bills, you are unlikely to have the headspace to think about your neighbours. But there are people amongst us who choose to look after their own interests for profit, and services like the NHS are privatised for profit, sewage is pumped into our beautiful estuary for profit, and our planet's resources are being stripped for the profit of only a few people, and this is hardly a fair system. I want to live in a country where every living being can lead a comfortable, happy and dignified life, and I don't think that's too much of an ask. Therefore, I stand for a fairer, greener society with strong communities, and I urge you to vote Green for real hope and real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilly. Next is Lara Hurley from the Heritage Party. Thank you, Lara.
Hello, everybody. I'm very sweaty at the moment. Right, my name is Lara Hurley. I'm standing as a candidate for the Heritage Party for Southend West. My family own one of the cockle sheds in Leigh for over 65 years. I'm a member of the Together Declaration, Save Our Rights UK, and the National Residents Association, and I support Save Screens campaign and Us for Them campaign. I work in the community and talk to people every day about their experiences. The most common complaint is that people are struggling to get appointments with their doctors in Leigh. Our hospital is under enormous strain and our roads and streets are in disrepair. I also work for AICS International. We are very concerned about the recent cell towers being put in our residential areas. It has been discovered that the safety certificates for these towers, not just here in Southend, but across the UK, have either defunct company names on them or the limited company names which are not registered at Companies House. This is a concern, as how can public safety be ensured if certificates are misleading?
Next we have Tom Darwood, an independent candidate. Tom.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am an independent candidate for the 8th time, and I hope I get my message through. It's very simply, the best way I can put it across is this way. Blessed be our nation, wrought by heaven's decree, casting out injustice, chastened with liberty. Wide the consecration of her works and fame, where the sun did flourish, never known to set. Never known to set. I'm not finished, sorry, let me finish. Left to us to cherish, be it not in vain. My admiration for this country is encrypted in my first verse, the rebirth of land of hope and glory, the rebirth of the United Kingdom of this great nation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Robert Francis is our next independent candidate. Robert's going to come and share with us now. Thank you, Robert.
Before I actually just sort of give an address, I'd just like to clarify something up. I did actually talk to the Electoral Commission, and they spoke to me and they said that this didn't seem like a proper non-selective hustings. They suggested that I report my concerns to the returning officer. So I have done, because they didn't feel that 60 seconds for an address and 90 seconds to reply to answers, and I've got things to say that you probably want to ask for more than 90 seconds, and I'm sure others would. It's a rather unjust way of doing things, and particularly, I wish the Klingons were actually controlling this, because at least they'd give you 2 minutes for you and your gallant crew. And the problem is that I'll now begin my, proper address. I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, so that everybody actually knows what's been going on. I'm standing because I have to. I used to work in the Met in security, intelligence and protection. The local MP was murdered. The local police station, which is full of corruption, as is Essex Police, contrived at his death, danced around, sung songs. I told a judge this before it actually happened, because I didn't believe I would be able to stop it. I was training as a clinical psychologist, a criminal psychologist. I know all the details as usual. How many times he'd be stabbed, where, when, the reasons why. And unfortunately, I do a lot of anti-terrorist stuff as well. And the drugs in this country that have come from Southend is enormous. It is the worst place in the country. Okay. Thank you. That's why people are cranked out in the street.
Next we have David Burton-Sampson, our Labour Party candidate. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming here this evening, and hopefully you'll find this a lively and informative event. And thank you to the organisers for pulling this together. This election is about change. After 14 years of chaos with this government, with our NHS in crisis, crime on the streets, bills spiralling through the roof, and our schools crumbling around our children's heads, nobody feels better off. It's time for change, and the Labour Party has a plan to get this country back on track with a decade of national renewal, starting with our first 6 steps, which I'm hoping to share more detail with you all tonight. I commit to being a community-based, community-focused MP, taking your fight to Parliament so that we get the investment into this city that we need, so that everyone can live a happier, healthier and fairer life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have Stephen Cummins from the Liberal Democrat Party.
Thank you to you all for being here. As the Minister said, my name is Stephen Cummins. I'm representing the Liberal Democrats. I'm proud to be a Liberal Democrat, and I think it's a show of the faith in democracy that you're all here to hear, all of us. We're on an equal footing, and each of you are on an equal footing. You each have a vote. I would say you should vote for me because I live in this constituency and I love it, and I want the best for the people who live here. I'll work hard to improve our struggling hospital. There are junior doctors striking this week. There are wards potentially closing. It is in a crisis. I'll work hard to get the sewage out of our beautiful estuary and our waterways. This will mean putting pressure and in the pockets of the water companies, because that's the only reason they'll listen to. And I'll work hard to improve the quality of life for all the people of Southend. Nobody should need to go to a food bank. Carers should be given what they need. People with disabilities should be given what they need. The priorities of politicians have been completely wrong, and I want to win back people's trust. And thank you. Thank you.
Last but by no means least, Peter. Peter Little is our UK Reform candidate. Thank you, Peter.
Well, I'm glad they've left the best till last anyway. I'm Peter Little. I've lived in Southend now for 45 years. I've lived and worked here. I have been a non-executive of our hospital. It was a lot better when I was a non-exec, by the way. I've also been a non-exec on a mental health trust, and I currently chair a daycare services company, a residential services company in Southend. The reason I'm standing is quite simple. I'm not a professional politician, never have been, doubt whether I will be. I'll be a damn good constituency MP though. But the reason I'm standing is because I believe that the Conservatives don't deserve to get back in. I don't trust the Labour Party, and I think that we need radical reform, and I think that the Reform Party is the party that is going to do that. It is actually offering solutions to those problems. I've just seen the hand up there, so I won't let the bell go. I'd love to answer your questions later. Thank you.
So thank you for keeping to time, almost. It's a good start. We're going to get off to a good way. Now, it is, we've come to the question and answer section of the evening. And as I said, we've had a huge number of questions submitted. So for the sake of brevity and to honour those who were reluctant to stand and ask their questions in this public setting, I will give the first name of the questioner and relay their questions to you. I will then invite each candidate to give their answers, allowing for up to 60 seconds each. You'll have seen already, Lionel in our front row will give you a hand up when you've got 10 seconds left, and then the bell will ring at the end of your minute. We've asked the candidates that in giving their answers, they focus exclusively on their views and the policies of their own party. It has been well documented in recent days how the public finds the relentless attacking of opponents petty and exasperating. We have suggested it is in the interests of the candidates to model respectful dialogue and spend their time ensuring no one leaves wondering what they stand for. But I hope I can expect the same respectful conduct from all of us. I appreciate that there are many passionate views held in this room, but I hope you would all agree the candidates deserve their time to be uninterrupted. It will, I promise, help us to get through as many questions as possible if we can have an undisrupted evening where we all commit to listen well and keep cheers and jeers to a minimum. So here we go. We're going to have a different person begin each time, and then you'll get the hang of it. I'll introduce you to each one. So the first question that was one of the most popular issues raised by the public was from Louise. How will your party's national policies ensure the water quality of the city of Southend's beaches are fit for bathing at all times? I'm going to start with Anna at the end there.
Right, well, thank you very much, Louise, for the question, because this has been an absolute major focus for me. And my party introduced the Environment Act, which means that the waters are now being measured for the first time. Since 2016, we now have 100% of our storm overflows measured. Now, what I am doing is holding the water companies to account with quarterly water summits. The result of that is that they are putting an £104 million investment into Southend and going to make us an international exemplar and beat the government's targets, reducing storm overflows. I've already got rid of one 5 years ahead of the rest of the country. And they're only doing that because we are working together as a community and solving this problem, which has been present since the sewers were first designed in there was a Royal Commission in 1915. The problem's been there since then. We are solving it together here in Southend.
Thank you. Thank you. Tilly.
Thank you. Holding water companies to account is a very good start, but it is by far not enough, because the main problem is the water sewage systems that we have are not up to standard. They are outdated, they are old, and currently profits are going into the pockets of a few shareholders and not into rebuilding the outdated water systems, and that has to stop. And therefore, the only way forward is to bring the water systems back into public property, into public ownership, so that any investments can be made publicly and any income can go back into the systems. Thank you.
David.
Thank you. And the Labour Party and myself are very clear on this. In 2024, we should not be having sewage being pumped into our rivers, our estuary and our waters. It's unacceptable. So enough is enough. We're going to legislate against this. We're going to make the water companies pay to clean up the mess that they make. And we will put water companies into special measures and fine them if they continue to do these illegal dry discharges into the estuary at times when they shouldn't. This has got to happen. Enough is enough. Enough talking now. We need to take action because this is unacceptable. We should be able to swim in that sea whenever we want to, not have to look at an app to see whether there's sewage being pumped in at that point of the day or not. So enough is enough. We will hit these companies in their pockets, stop the shareholders from receiving their mega bonuses until they get their house in order and sort out these systems.
Thank you. Many thanks. Stephen.
I would say we need three things. We need independent people looking at the amount of surge in the water, not the companies themselves. We can't have the companies marking their own homework. The second thing is all sewage should be treated. It shouldn't be dumped into the sea, any of it, all of it, 100%. Other countries have managed it, and we need to do it. We need to make the companies pay to do this. They are taking in plenty of money, and it is going to be national law that's going to make this happen. And like any construction work, if they miss their deadlines, they get fined. They have to be incentivized and de-incentivized to make them do this. And as I said, financially, that is the only way we can make them do it. They obviously don't care enough.
Thank you. And Peter.
Well, I think that the solution has already been given here. Certainly we believe that water companies should be responsible. They should actually be rewarded if they're actually performing well. They should be penalised if they are failing to meet their targets, if bonuses are being awarded for totally mismanaged situations. And at the end of the day, it is about a normal performance management. And it's as simple as that. We would not rule out actually having a levy on them if they do miss these targets. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it is a national scandal that we've got these water companies that are paying dividends actually out of debt. These are driven by venture capital firms that have actually raised debt and they're paying it out as dividends. And I think that's a scandal.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to check. I'm a bit nervous Stephen's microphone might not have worked. Did everybody hear what Stephen said? I think we'll... Yeah, okay. Stephen, are you all right for another microphone to come up? It's a handheld. You asked me not to give you a handheld, but I presume... Are you happy with that?
That's fine. Well, if I can sit down, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's...
stand up and walk on crutches and hold a microphone.
Is it actually... Is that one working?
Oh, no, hold on. Is there a button somewhere? It says green.
Yeah,
Is it on? On the bottom?
David will sort you out. Sorry for this, we just need to make sure everybody gets heard. Let's give it a 1-2.
One, two.
Still not working, David.
It's still not working, David.
Oh, there we go. I think we got it.
It's working now.
Hooray! Right, okay, we're back on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Right, second question then. This question's come from Sarah. And Sarah wants to know, what do you feel the UK's responsibilities are for tackling global poverty? And what would your timetable be for restoring the UK's international development spending to 0.7% of GDP? And we're going to start with Tilly.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and it's not my most special area, I admit, but so I can't give you figures. But what is very clear is that we need to help the countries in the world that are not as fortunate as we are. We are living in one of the richest countries in the world, and there are many countries that have a lot less, and without being able to give you figures, we need to help. We need to come from a point of compassion and give assistance to people who are less fortunate, whether they're in our own country or in the wider world or in the developing world, because every person in the world has a right to a safe and happy and dignified life.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Labour Party has in our manifesto a commitment that we will aim to get back to that 0.75% level. We won't set a time frame on it, because what we're not going to do at this election is make unfunded spending commitments. We are going to commit what we know we can deliver. But this is an absolute aspiration. Tilly's absolutely right. We are a compassionate nation, and we should be doing everything to help the people in this world. But we have to also fix our own problems first as well, because there is so much broken in this country. So during the next 5 years, our priority is going to be on fixing those key things, but aiming to get back up to that 0.75% level.
Thank you. Stephen?
Well, a show of hands, who here gives money to charity? And I think that all of the people of the UK would want to help poorer people in other countries. 0.7% doesn't sound like a lot. Tax revenues last year in the UK were actually up 5%. In other words, the UK tax revenues were doing better. Most of us aren't, but the UK tax revenues are. That's over 850 billion. And, you know, can we afford to give 0.7% of what our government is taking in to help people even worse off than a lot of the worse off people in this country? And I think so. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
Well, I'm going to be the odd man out. We're not making a commitment to go to 0.7%. And I'll tell you for why. Because in answer to the question, and everybody put their hands up, how many people give to charity? Yes, we do give to charity, but we select who we're going to give the charity to, the monies to the charities. And I think this is very, very important. Who are we sending this money to? Why? And what is it being used for? So we are not making a commitment to go to 0.7% of GDP.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Conservative Party position is that we do want to aspire to get to 0.7%, but we are also not setting any timescale on this. My personal position is I'm very proud of the amount of humanitarian aid we give as a country. We're giving a huge amount of aid to Gaza, which is the right thing to do. And we also bring in a huge number of people. I'm proud that 550,000 people have come to this country through the Homes for Ukraine, the Syrian scheme, the Afghan scheme, etc. It's fantastic. Whenever there's a problem in the world, we give generously in this country. But I'm very concerned about the health inequalities right here in Southend. There's a difference in life expectation of 10 years from one side of the city to the other. That should be our focus at the moment. We've gone through COVID, our NHS, our services, all of our infrastructure needs investment, and I think that should be our primary focus at this moment in time.
Thank you very much. We're going to stay on the theme of poverty, but this time focusing on UK poverty, and this question's come from Natasha. Natasha has asked, Southend has a fantastic reputation for caring for those in our community who find themselves in hard times. In Southend West alone, half the 20,000 food parcels given out in the last 5 financial year are in this constituency. If elected, will you pledge to use your voice as our MP to advocate for changes which will ensure our social security system protects people from needing a food bank to survive? David.
Yeah, well, thank you to Natasha for that question, and absolutely 100%. I mean, why on earth have we got more food banks opening in this country than there are restaurants and supermarkets opening in this country? We should not have food banks. We shouldn't have to have them. People should not be in these positions where they need to rely on food banks. We've got nurses relying on food banks. We've got police officers relying on food banks. And that has to stop. So we've got to fix the economy first to get this cost of living crisis over, and Labour has plans to do that. But in the meantime, until that happens, because this is not going to be a magic wand moment if Labour take government on the 5th of July, it's going to take time because the economy and everything else is in such a mess. But yes, I will stand up and make sure that those who run food banks and those who use food banks get the support that they need.
Thank you. Stephen.
I can echo what my colleagues have said. The question also focuses on social security. We need to remove the cap on benefits for families with more than 2 children. We need to make universal care actually provide a living wage for the poorest people, enough to live on. And this is something I will get emotional about, because I've been to the Trussell Trust, I've been to visit them and see what they're doing, and I didn't even realise that Southend West there are so many people that badly off. I imagined most people are quite well off. It goes to show how wrong I was. But the important thing here is that people need enough money to survive who are on universal benefits, and they also need, as I said, that cap removed. And one of the other problems I've encountered with parents with children with learning difficulties and other things is the process of getting help from the local council is impossible. The forms are crazy long, and there's a lot needs to be done to improve things. Okay. Sorry, is the bell 10 seconds?
The bell is time up.
Oh, sorry, bell's time up.
Watch out for the hand up. The hand up is 10 seconds.
Oh, sugar.
No, that's fine. Don't you worry. Thank you. If we have time, we may come on to that issue later on. Peter.
Right. Well, I personally think that this is symptomatic of a problem. And the problem is a low-wage economy. And what we've really got to tackle is actually increasing real wages. And we've got a stagnant economy, we've had very little growth, we've been taxed to the highest level for 70 years. And what does that cause? It causes a cost of living crisis. It means that people don't have enough disposable income. So the food banks are systematic of it. So the issue is one of growing the economy, getting more real growth in wages, and making sure that people can then afford, rather than go to food banks, and have decent living standards. I don't need the bell.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Anna.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, we've been through a very tough time globally. And of course, I don't want people relying on food banks, but we are not actually alone. Just you might like to know that there are 2 million people in this country reliant on food banks. There are 1.5 million in Germany. There are 3.5 million people in France. The point is, we are not alone in having this as a problem that we need to tackle. And I've worked with the food banks in Southend. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The government has given out £104 million in aid as a result of the cost of living crisis. That's an average of £3,700 per family. You know, these are huge sums of money, and we are going to have to all think about this tax burden. It is currently £36,000 per working person in this country. We are going to have to do things differently. The fastest way out of poverty is employment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Tilly.
I agree, we have to do things differently, and for that we have to not look at countries who do things equally bad or worse than we do, but to places who do things better, or come, as I said before, from a place of compassion. And I think it's absolutely disgusting that so many people rely on food banks these days, people who are in work, who should be able to afford food and bills and all of that. And we need to get out of that situation, and for that we need a system change. We need to raise minimum wages to an actual living wage. We need to lift the 2 children benefit cap. We need to increase the benefits. We need to make it easier and stop the outrageous wait times before you can actually get benefits, which puts people into poverty. And in the long term, I am a great advocate for a universal basic income, which will help anybody to have their basic needs covered, to then be able to live a good life and learn and study and contribute to society.
Thank you. Thank you. This isn't a telling off, but if we cheer and we clap and we jeer, it takes away time from the candidates. So please, I know it's hard, but try to keep that to a minimum. Next question comes from Val. Val says this is quite a long question, but I think it's worth stating in full. We have in our world 117.3 million people who at the end of 2023, as a result of persecution... No, this is the question. It's just I couldn't put it all up on the screen, so please just listen. That's okay. As a result of persecution, conflict, violence, or events seriously disturbing public order have been forcibly displaced. Many of them have been forced to flee their countries, looking for protection and hope. Thurgood Marshall once said, "The measure of a country's greatness is its ability to retain compassion in times of crisis." With the cost of living crisis, the NHS crisis, and the climate crisis needing urgent attention, do you agree that we must retain compassion to those fleeing war, famine, and persecution by cancelling the Rwanda plan, providing a functional asylum system, and increasing our provision of safe routes for legitimate refugees? Stephen, could you start us off?
Well, I very much believe in democracy, as I said, a liberal democracy. And that's the idea that everyone is equal. And that could be us tomorrow needing to leave our country because of persecution or because we're in a minority. I think that our system has been incredibly cruel and has been incredibly inhumane. And I want to get back to a system that is compassionate, that is just, and reflects the high good values of the United Kingdom and doesn't make us look like a pariah in the international law community.
Peter.
Well, again, we've got an underlying question here with, if you like, a problem that needs solving, and that's immigration. And let's actually remember what we're talking about here. Everybody says, yes, we want to be compassionate. Yes, we want to be supportive. But we had 650,000 legal immigrants in this country last year. We'll have another 50,000 immigrants coming over on the small boats. That is 6 million people over the life of this government that have come into this country. And that's putting pressure on the schools, on the NHS, on the roads. And I firmly believe that, yes, we can all talk about compassion. I'm sure that everybody would support that. But we need to have it measured. We need to have it controlled. And we need to make sure that, don't count me out, and we need to make sure that it's enforced fairly and not arbitrarily.
Thank you. Anna.
Thank you. So we're talking about two things here because there are three types of immigration: legal immigration, illegal immigration, and asylum. Now, of course, I would like us to be able to open up more safe and legal routes. In particular, I'm a big supporter of the women in Iran who have been absolutely persecuted. And as I said in the answer to the previous question, I'm really proud of what we've done with the Homes for Ukraine scheme, where 200,000 people have come to this country from a war-torn zone. The total we brought in the last Parliament was 550,000. But we can't have these legal and safe routes if we don't have a cap on immigration, because we can't take the numbers who are seeking to come here. So we've got to contain immigration so we can actually have the safe and legal routes for the people that really need our help and that we want to help. But the Homes for Ukraine scheme was such a success because it started with people having a home to go to, because we don't have an endless supply of homes for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Tilly.
I'm starting to feel like a broken record a bit because I'm using the word compassion again. And that is where, again, I come from in this question. Those people asking to come into this country and this question, clearly deals with people who are looking for asylum, not with illegal immigrants, not with legal immigrants who come here to work. It asks about those fleeing war, and they are people, they are human beings. They are treated like I want to say animals, but I wouldn't treat animals like the way those refugees are treated at times, and I find that outrageous. And we need to find safe ways for those people to come to a place of safety and dignity, because it could happen to anybody with the climate crisis. We do not know where this planet is going and which country will not exist soon, and maybe we're the next ones to flee when the water levels rise. We're on an island. So compassion and welcome people and give them a way to integrate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, David.
Thank you. Well, Val, let's be quite frank. The Rwanda scheme is smoke and mirrors. It is inhumane, it's incompassionate, and it's the biggest waste of money that we've ever seen to try and address this immigration problem. We absolutely should be a compassionate country, 100%. But the asylum system, the immigration system is broken, and that is not compassionate. We should not be in the position where people are getting on boats and sinking in the middle of the channel. We should be going after these criminal gangs who are putting these people on those boats in the first place and dealing with them. That's the way to stop the boats and stop people dying. Once people get here through legal or illegal routes, they should be dealt with and given a future. We've got tens of thousands of people stuck in the asylum system because they've not been dealt with. We're paying for that. They've not got a future. They don't know what their future is. It's simply unacceptable, and Labour will get this back in control.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a breather. We're doing well. You're keeping the time, keeping the task. I'm very grateful for everything that you've shared so far. We're going to change subject again now and look at antisocial behaviour and crime. The question comes from Matilda. Antisocial behaviour and low-level crime are a big issue in the local area. My brother works in retail and deals with shoplifting every day, which can often get threatening or even violent. As well as shoplifting, there is a lot of other low-level crime and antisocial behaviour which makes people feel unsafe. How might you tackle this? We'll start with Peter.
Well, thank goodness we got this question, because it's one that I feel very strongly about. I think we've got antisocial behaviour because all of a sudden we've got wokeism, haven't we? We've got wokeism creeping into... We've got wokeism creeping into the police. You know, why is it that shoplifters can get away almost willy-nilly with up to £200? We see it every day in the paper. We've got knife crime. Where's stop and search? You know, knife crime has actually gone up because stop and search has gone down. We also, as well, have a situation whereby the police are probably spending more time on bureaucracy than they are out on the streets. So we need more policemen on the streets actually being visible. And that, I think, is going to be the old-fashioned and correct way in which we are going to bring down antisocial behaviour, bring down crime, and make the streets safer, because people can then feel comfortable walking those streets day or night.
Thank you, Peter. Anna.
Yeah, so this really worried me when I first was elected. And I think some of you know that I was asked by the police over Christmas if I could help, because a 17-year-old had ordered a massive machete that was delivered to his house in Leigh-on-Sea, just as if it was Deliveroo. These are killing knives. And then on another time, the seafront traders called me down because we had 400 canisters of nitrous oxide after one weekend. And the young people were abusing it so much that they were obviously causing a nuisance, but also really damaging themselves. I'm a practical person. If I see a problem in front of me, I want to solve it, which is why I took these examples straight to the Home Secretary, and why nitrous oxide is now a Class C drug, and using it recreationally is illegal. and I've closed a loophole with zombie knives. Those are two things. Generally, we have more police now. We have 83 more police, more than we've ever had before, and we are deploying them to hotspots. That's how we're solving it, making them visible, and I'm very proud to be working with them to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Tilly.
Thank you. I've been called an idealist, but I would start this issue by tackling it from the root and looking at why there is so much antisocial behavior. And I think working at prevention is much more important than working at policing. There is a place for policing, surely, but what we need is more youth clubs so that young people have something to do and have something to connect with. Better community connection, so people feel embedded in their community, so they care about where they live. And we need to tackle the cost of living crisis, because a lot of people are just so destitute that they resort to crime. So yes, there is a place for policing, but the problem lies much, much, much deeper, and it needs a change of the system to get to the root of it. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Thank you, and thank you, Matilda, for the question. Antisocial behaviour is a massive problem. I'm hearing it every day on the doorsteps. It's actually, according to the latest statistics, 39% higher here in Southend than the national average. And we need to address that. So we have a two-pronged approach. We are firstly going to do what a lot of people have said and put more police on the street. 13,000 extra police, neighbourhood police, who will patrol the streets, and you will have a named officer in every area who's responsible for getting antisocial behaviour down, who will attend if somebody nicks under £200 out of a shop. I mean, ridiculous that doesn't happen anyway. But then there's the prevention. So we're going to put youth hubs across this country, places where young people can go and get not only somewhere to go and something to do, but that place where they can get early intervention before they go onto that spiral of antisocial behaviour, drugs, and then into low-level crime and potentially more serious crime. Thank you.
Stephen.
1,500 knife crimes in Southend in the last year. Things are not getting better. And I think we all know that. Shoplifting is largely people shoplifting essentials or things they can sell or resell, like steaks. Or people selling, like I've been in shops recently where they have like magnetic things to stop you stealing just basic foods, things that people need. So to get back to the key question, or I feel bad for Matilda's brother. So the cost of living and poverty is part of the problem. The majority of young men, not 10 to 19 years old, who are carrying a knife, think it's making them safer. They think that this is going to help protect them. So what we need to do is get into schools, or get out to these young people, maybe youth clubs, and we need to tell them, no, it's the opposite. Oh, that's the wave, so 10 minutes. And we can, and we lower, we can lower crime and antisocial behaviour by getting to the kids early.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Going to move on to talk about climate and the environment, and it's worth just noting we had a number of questions in this area, questions about fossil fuels, about food security, about compensation to developing world countries, about species extinction, about pollution, about insulation, about recycling. In truth, we could have run a whole evening just on this subject. So we've selected a question from Adrian that hopefully gives you scope to address climate issues in their fullest order. In order to get us on track for achieving net zero emissions in the UK, what policies must the government introduce in the next Parliament? Anna.
Well, I'm actually really proud of this government's record. It was actually Mrs. Thatcher who first warned in 1988 in Bruges that climate was going to be one of the big issues, and she was absolutely right. We are now in a position where we've got 40% of our energy coming from renewables, and since 2000 we've reduced our emissions faster and further than any of our other comparative European countries. And how have we done that? One of the ways we've done that is through offshore wind. We have 5 of the biggest offshore wind plants in the world. And I would suggest that we need to continue doing something which we are world leaders at. And we've also now started to go back to investing in nuclear power. Again, something we were world leaders at in the 50s. The combination of both of those things will enable us to continue to make progress faster than anybody else in the whole world is making at the moment.
Thank you. Tilly.
I want to say 40% renewable is just not enough at this time. We should be much further than we are now. And our manifesto sets out to be at net zero no later, absolutely no later than 2040, by offshore wind, some onshore wind, solar power, solar panels included on every new build and retrofitted on roofs, housing insulation schemes to bring the need for heating down, investing into other renewable sources of energy, such as water, hydraulics, and all those kind of systems, investing into better ways of storing energy to ensure that we have energy when the sun isn't shining and it's not windy, because that's also necessary, and completely divesting from fossil fuels and also not getting distracted by nuclear power, because that is expensive and dangerous, and with the changing climate will get more and more dangerous the warmer it gets.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. I want to focus on one of those first 6 steps that Labour has set out, which is Great British Energy. The idea of Great British Energy is that it will focus on generating our own energy in this country using clean, green methods. So, doubling the use of onshore wind, tripling the use of solar, quadrupling the use of offshore wind, using new technologies such as floating wind farms and tidal and the likes. It's really quite an exciting prospect. And the most important thing is, not only will it be generating energy in this company, it will be owned by the state. So profits will be reinvested back into the country, and it will help you with the cost of living, because it's estimated to reduce your average household energy bills by £300 a year. And it will create 650,000 jobs across this country. That is a really exciting prospect that addresses so many different areas.
Stephen.
The Liberal Democrat approach is to reduce emissions, but also reduce the cost of living at the same time. If with the government pay, as mentions its government policies, paying for low-income families to have their houses insulated for free will mean that they need to buy less energy, they need to create less energy. We also want to provide policies that will provide solar paneling for people on their homes. So the idea is that we're reducing our emissions, but we're also reducing the cost of living. So it's for everyone's benefit in both ways.
Thank you. And Peter.
Well, we're taking a completely different approach. We believe that the cost of going green with arbitrarily imposed targets is wrong. It costs this country close on 25 to 30 billion pounds a year. What we should be doing is having more North Sea oil and gas licenses. We should have fracking. We should have fracking, on a test basis for 2 years, and that we should actually look towards the Chinese are the big problem here. They produce 27% of the world's CO2 emissions. We produce 1%. If you take India, if you take South America, you're up to 65%. That's the problem. We do not provide that solution. We will not save the planet by going green. What we'll do is that we will bankrupt a lot of industries. We're exporting industry, e.g. electric cars. Where are they coming from? China.
Thank you. Next question was one of the most popular questions that was asked, and it was difficult to find a question that represented the majority of you, so please hear that when I ask this question. This is from Rachel on gender identity. Provision of single-sex services which recognise biological sex over gender identity are vital for the safety, dignity and equality of women and girls. If elected, will you seek to ensure that women's rights are fully protected on the basis of sex? Tilly.
So this is a very loaded question. I get what you say, that there were many questions. I want to say trans women are women, and I stand up for people identifying the way they feel and they are born, and sex and gender are different things. This is not a question I can answer in a minute. It's hugely complicated, but I find it really concerning what is going on in the country, because there are people talking about, people are incredibly scared about things that they don't understand fully. And I can't say I fully understand everything, because this is not how my brain is. But I think as long as a person doesn't harm another person, they should be living the way they want to live and want to feel.
Thank you. Thank you. David.
Well, thank you very much. And I, again, could talk all night about this, because this is a massively loaded question that, let's be quite frank, has led to a culture war across this country that needs to be addressed. Now, absolutely, we know what a biological woman is, and we know what a biological man is. We understand biology. And I also seek to understand what it means to be trans, because there are trans people in this world. Now, I'm all for inclusion and equality, and I think we need to take the heat out of this argument, because both sides are not listening to each other, and that's not helped by the press. We need to take the heat out of this and start listening to what each other are saying, because both sides have some extremely valid points. But we need to be listening to each other, taking the heat out of it, and looking at how we can just accept people for who they are in our society.
Thank you. Stephen.
I don't want us to end up on the wrong side of history with this one. We've heard about, segregating bathrooms and things like that before, during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Now, I fully believe in women having safe spaces. I fully believe, for example, the domestic abuse charities and organisations in Southend, they already don't allow men in until after 5 p.m, and I think that's good and that's right. And I think the basis of this question comes down to the idea that women deserve to be safe from men, and I 100% agree. Right? That's the first point I'll make. The second point I'll make is, who decides who's a woman? All of you? Me? David? In the end, each one of you decides who you are. I'm not going to tell you. Do we want anyone telling us who we are? I don't think that's right. I don't think that's just. And that is the basis of this. Everyone should feel protected. Everyone should feel safe.
Thank you very much. Peter.
Well, the very short answer to Rochelle's question is, yes, I would recognise the need for biological sex over gender identity. I think that's a very important point. I believe that a man has a penis, a woman has a vagina. And I think that the way that this can be overcome, if you like, this is wokery again, isn't it? It's creeping into society. But it goes back to schools. What we have in schools at the moment is that we have education, transgender education. Now, surely that has got to be a first point in which we can stop this nonsense going on. And let's be serious about this. This is nonsense. You know, now I do realise that men could transition and possibly then acquire a vagina, but not necessarily born with one. And you have to recognise that. Let's be truthful about it.
Thank you. Nana.
Absolutely. The question was, will you seek to ensure that women's rights are fully protected on the basis of sex? Yes, I will. What has been happening in our schools, what has been happening in sports, what has been happening at the Tavistock Clinic is nothing short of an absolute scandal. I fully support Hilary Cass's report. No children should be given puberty blockers under the age of 16. Biological sex is a reality, and we all need to accept that. However, I really do think we should be kinder and we should be more understanding to people who don't identify with their biological sex. And it is not helpful to that category of people for us to have so much toxicity around that condition. They also need help, but that cannot happen at the expense of the safety and the privacy of women or children.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next question concerns local authority funding, and it's from Kay. What do you intend to do to ensure councils are properly funded to meet the needs of their residents, that improve lives with the level of services quite rightly expected from the local authority in which this constituency is situated? David.
Yeah, absolutely. I, as a former councillor, have seen how local authorities have been decimated by the lack of funding that we have, and all local authorities around this country, including here in Southend, are having to make some really tough decisions because of the lack of certainty of where the next pound is coming from. Now, fortunately, Southend City Council is well run, and the finances, as much as you may be told differently, have been well run by all administrations, and I will say that for both. What we intend to do is give local authorities more certainty with, instead of the okay, we're about to set our budget, now how much are we going to get from government? We will be giving local authorities multi-year settlements, so they know in advance exactly what funding they're going to be getting, and therefore they can plan better in terms of how that money's going to be spent. I could go on more, but the bells rang.
I'm sure, thank you. Stephen.
You don't know who's going to be next, you see, you're just waiting. Right, I'll just try and take it in different parts. So what do you intend to do to ensure councils are properly funded to meet the needs of their residents? Increase the amount of money they're getting from central government. What are we going to do that will improve lives with the level of services quite rightly expected from the local authority in which this constituency is expected? Well, increase funding from central government. Yeah, that was actually quite easy. There you go.
Thank you. Peter.
Well, I'm going to agree with some of the views that David has said, because I think Southend is a pretty well-run council. But it's a well-run council because it's actually sort of quite innovative in some of the things it's taking. I'll give you an example. The company I was telling you about earlier on, which looks after sort of both residential and daycare provision, is a company that's 100% owned by the council. It's called our local authority trading company. And by that, it means that we are a trading company. We're no longer a department of the council. We're not constrained by the council's T's and C's for the workforce. And one of the reasons that the council did this was to actually ensure that the services that we are providing are run better, more efficiently, and more cost effectively. And, I'm sorry, the bell's coming up again. So in answer to the question, delegate more, push it down, look towards creating a more entrepreneurial yet council umbrella.
Thank you. Anna.
Well, if I thought that money was going to go straight towards cutting the verges, then absolutely. Because the top issues on the doorstep have been pavements, potholes and verges. And one of the things that frustrates me as a national politician is lobbying really hard to get money coming from central government to local government, and then I can't see it being spent on the things that it has been given for. Potholes is an absolute case in point. Buses is another. However, the other side of this coin is I have been a local councillor myself, and I know that between 2010 and 2015, local councils really made cuts. They made swinging cuts when George Osborne was bringing down austerity. If the national government had made the same cuts that local government had made, we would have eliminated the deficit. So a lot of councils do an awful lot of good work, and I will always champion my local council when it gets to the local government settlement in Parliament on a yearly basis.
Thank you. And Tilly.
Local councils do an awful lot of good work to make do with very little money because they have no choice. Because over the last decade and a half or so, the money given by local government has gone down and down and down. So I would ensure, quite simply, that councils are properly funded again so that they can provide services to the residents that are provided at council level.
Thank you. So again, changing tack completely now, and we're going to focus on international issues with Israel and Palestine. The question comes from John, and the question is, Israel has been in the headlines ever since the October 2023 Gaza attacks. Opinions are sharply divided between pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. What is your opinion on how the UK should respond? And we'll go to Stephen first for this one.
Well, I think the worst thing we've been doing is funding the murder on both sides. And I think the important thing here, and this is the first thing I'm going to say, and I hope you remember I say this, we shouldn't take sides. These are human beings on both sides. These are children who were murdered at a concert. These are young children who were murdered in hospitals. So murder is murder, right? And graves are graves. And I think that we need to remember that these are just human beings like us, no matter what side they're on. Taking sides is the problem. I mean, I grew up in Ireland. I was born in the UK, but I grew up in Ireland. And we have managed to stop the endless killing in the north of Ireland. And we didn't stop it with more killing. You'd be surprised. Apparently, the only way to create peace is with peace, right? More peace leads to more peace. Sorry, I better go back to the question. I didn't get much time to think about it. Opinions are sharply divided. Well, that's the problem. Opinions are sharply divided. Could we not just unify on one thing? We want peace.
Thank you. Peter.
Well, let's actually consider this. Israel is a legally recognised nation state. Hamas is a terrorist organisation, even if the BBC don't recognise that. So therefore, we should abide by the rule of law and recognise an internationally recognised state and not a pariah that is actually spreading evil across the Middle East. My position is quite simple. We support all legal states. We do not support terrorism, and we should be against it.
Thank you. Anna.
Thank you. I think we can't ever forget what started this, which was the most horrendous attack on Israel by a terrorist organisation, the worst one since the Second World War. And we also shouldn't forget that there are 120 hostages, including 2 British citizens, that have yet to be released. Now, I was one of the MPs that spent all day wanting to speak, and I did speak eventually, in the Gaza-Israel ceasefire debate, the one that got completely railroaded by the Speaker. And I went and I wanted to speak in that debate because I wanted to support a humanitarian pause, the release of hostages leading to a ceasefire. That's the only way we can get a ceasefire, if those hostages are released. But we have to have a humanitarian pause so that we can get aid into people that desperately need it. And that aid has got to be protected by United Nations troops, in my opinion.
Tilly.
I echo a lot of what Stephen has said. I wouldn't call myself pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. I would call myself pro-peace. I think we should have an immediate bilateral ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire. We should stop exporting weapons to Israel and selling weapons to Israel. We should...
Hang on, please, don't interrupt.
People should stop killing each other. Those are human beings there. There are hospitals being bombed. There are children being murdered. And it is absolutely disgusting how many people are dying in this conflict. And it has to stop.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. Firstly, I just want to pick up on a point that Peter made. All of the Palestinians are not Hamas. So we need to be very careful with language here. So we want an immediate ceasefire. We want all hostages released. We want humanitarian aid restored into Gaza. What's happening to the Gazan people is absolutely devastating. And we want a two-state solution. That's our position. That's what we will be pushing for if we're in government. That's what we'll be petitioning for as part of the international community. And I agree with you, all lives are human lives and should be respected.
Thank you. Okay, back to local issues, national issues you might say as well. This is from Dan about affordable housing. As a 35-year-old man with until recently a decent salary, I have no chance on getting onto the property ladder anytime soon. What are your plans on providing local affordable housing? And we're going to start with Peter.
Well, if you listen to Nigel Farage's speech today, he was pointing out that we need to build a new house every 2 minutes to create sufficient housing stock. Now, we know that that is going to be impossible, but one of the problems that we have in this country about housing are the regulations, the time it takes, the NIMBYism, the fact that anybody almost can actually stop housing, affordable housing being built. So the answer, quite simply, is that we need to get regulations removed, we need to get planning applications speeded up, and we need to ensure that, yes, affordable housing is built, it's built quickly, and that therefore we can get more and more young people on the property ladder. Because until we do that, we're going to create a real social divide. So the answer to your question, speed up planning, build faster.
Thank you very much. Anna.
Yeah, well, I do agree we need more affordable housing. I am actually very proud of the government's record so far. We have built 2.5 million houses since 2010, and a third of those have been affordable, and we're committing to build another 1.6 million homes. We built 234,000 last year. I know we're not point scoring, but in the last year of the Labour government, they built 75,000, the lowest level of house building since the war. So this government has built a lot of homes. but the issue is one of affordability. Now that's why in our manifesto we are coming out, we have a new Help to Buy scheme to help people get that deposit that they need. It's the deposit which is causing the big blockage, and we are committed to giving a stamp duty holiday up to £425,000. So that means that's not just the first home, but the second home for families as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Tilly.
The problem we have at the moment is that we have housing developments going up that are built by developers for profit, and they are not meeting the needs. What we need is the right houses at the right place at the right price. And that means building, and the Green Party has it in the manifesto, building actual social housing that is affordable for people and available to people, and is proper, good quality housing stock that is properly insulated as well, protecting green belt land, giving access to nature, and not building for profit in the pockets of some developers, building houses that nobody can afford.
David.
Well, I work in this industry and I see devastating the facts that many, many young people will not get onto the housing ladder, if at all, but until they're in maybe their late 30s, 40s, and that's unacceptable. So we're going to change this. We are going to build 1.5 million homes over the next Parliament, a mixture of social, council, and also affordable housing, backed up by our new Freedom to Buy scheme, which will help young people to get on the property ladder with low deposits. Now, this will be on new build properties, and it will be on the basis that these new build properties are for local people first. So this is really, really important. So we've got to have this revolution of house building. We've got to get Britain building again, because the big problem here is the lack of housing stock. So we do need to reform the planning rules as well to help with getting the movement of these properties being built a lot quicker. Thank you.
And Stephen.
Wow. Well, I moved back from Ireland 10 years ago and I was back off the property ladder. I was renting again here. And so I really do sympathise with Dan, you know, even if you have a decent salary. God, this is a big question. Part of the problem is, let's say Dan's on 50,000 a year, which is amazing. He still isn't going to be able to save for deposit because of the cost of living, which has gone up 20% in the last 5 years. Let's say he can save for deposit. Let's say he needs 5%. 5% of what? Say, I saw a house for sale in Shoeburyness recently, £750,000. I'm not good at maths. What's 5% of that? He's never going to save that, right? So, we talk about providing local affordable housing. I think that's great. The problem is we have all these brown, what are they called? Brown something sites? Brownfield, yeah. That means rich person owns it, won't sell it to anybody, including the council, for more than billions and millions. So there's a huge amount of greed in this system. So I think we need central government legislation that allows them to buy stuff. I can't remember if that's 10 seconds or short.
No, you're up, I'm afraid.
It's a big problem, okay? It's a big problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, good luck, Dan.
Okay, we're going to move on to special educational needs and disabilities, and this question's come from Maggie. What will you do nationally and locally to ensure that neurodivergent children can access their basic rights to education, mental health services, and early identification and intervention? Anna.
So this is really important to me. I think all children should have an equal opportunity to fulfil their potential, which is why when Kingsdown School had the massive problem that it had with RAC, I got the minister down here and I said it is not good enough for us to have all the administrative staff in the corridor and for the children not even to have access to the kitchen. you've got to, get a move on and get this sorted. And we did get it sorted, sort of. We've got half of Kingsdown School is now going to be completely rebuilt. And it was the number one priority for the relevant minister. What I want us to do is to use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expand the school as well, so that we get economies of scale and we get more places for SEND children because they are so desperately needed. The other thing that's come that I think, parents need help to get through the bureaucracy, to get the EHCP. We need an advocate to help parents navigate that maze.
Thank you very much. Tilly.
This is a great question because those of you who know me will know that I work with neurodivergent children. I work with those children that cannot get on in regular school system because the school system is not made for children whose brains don't function in or don't work in this way that the brains function very well. They just work differently and they can't work in the school system because the system is so incredibly rigid. And that needs to change. The school system needs to have more people trained to know how to work with all sorts of children, not just neurodivergent children, but all children who have different needs to what the schools cater for at the moment. They need to be properly funded. They need to be not just more specialist SEND schools. They need to be properly funded to accommodate the needs of those children in regular schools, and there need to be outdoor learning places because the outdoor is the best for mental health, and there needs to be early screening, early recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David.
Well, yeah, thank you, Maggie, for your question. And I'm a school governor, so I see the impact on the primary school I'm in particular, with young children having to be segregated from the main classroom and put into a separate room because the teachers in that school haven't got the abilities to be able to deal with those children who are neurodiverse, and there's nowhere else for them to go, and that's simply unacceptable. So this is a two-pronged problem. It's a problem with the education system that we need to fix. We need to be aiming to keep more children who are neurodiverse within and have SEND needs within the mainstream school system. But we also need more places in special schools where these children can be given the support that they need. Because some people, the mainstream system just will not work for them, and keeping them there is unfair. But then it comes on to early diagnosis as well. That's something that we need to talk about in relation to the NHS.
Thank you. Stephen.
The Liberal Democrats will have a central national organisation for early identification and intervention. That's the first thing. Locally, I've spoken to many parents. I think there's over 3,000 parents with young people in Southend who, and adults as well, because if you're neurodivergent, you get to the age of 18 and you still have special needs. You still need someone to look after you. Let's not forget that. So what they need is, and this is what they've told me, they need three things. They need bureaucracy reduced, like a 60-page form to try and get money. That's the first thing. They need that taken away. 2, the local council has not been engaging with them or in communicating with them or listening to them at all for years, apparently. So the first thing I will do will be open that channel of communication again. That's the second thing. And I'm trying to remember what the third thing is, but I've actually already been to 2 of these, and I've got 10 seconds left. Well, they need to be given their basic rights to everything. They need to be treated with the same dignity and respect. All of us need to be treated. Oh, yeah, the most important thing.
Ask him afterwards. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry.
Manage the transition for those people between 18, or sorry, before they're 18 and after they're 18. Apparently that's
monkey.
A nightmare.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, I cheated. Sorry.
No, that's all right, don't you worry. Thank you. Peter.
I'd like to pick up on this transitioning thing because this is the key thing, that we have to remember that children are probably more complex to deal with than adults, but we need to make sure that they do get the support when they do transition from the educational side to the support side. And I think Southend is actually sort of pretty good at doing that. You know, I know that we've got the local council bureaucracy, but I tell you what, some of the services that the Southend Council provide are actually sort of pretty good, and I think we should be proud of it. The way that we actually sort of improve it, though, is to get more resources into the teachers that are providing the support for these children. And maybe I can give you a story about a friend of ours whose child actually questioned another child about coming to school one day as a boy and the next day as a girl. He was then suddenly hauled out. And I don't know what the teacher, the officer was, but he was told to stop it. We should be spending that money on these teachers, specialist teachers, rather than this kind of woke bureaucracy again, dare I say.
Thank you. We have 3 questions left. We should be able to get through each of them if we keep to time. You're doing very well. This is an interesting question because it may touch on some of the things that we've already just been speaking about. But I think nevertheless it's an important one to ask, and it's from Zenelia. She asks, what will be your top priority to achieve for our constituency? Simple question. What will be your top priority to achieve for our constituency? I apologise, there's a question on the screen as well that covers a similar question. What do you think is the biggest challenge in the area that needs addressing? Those are 2 questions that were piled together in the same area. You can feel free to answer either of them. What will be your top priority, or perhaps what do you consider the biggest challenge in the area that needs addressing? Tilly.
There are so many big issues and challenges that I am not quite sure where to start. I think the biggest issue, not just in the area, but nationwide, is the huge inequality between the richest and the poorest, and I think that is something that really needs addressing, and it needs to be addressing through a number of different measures, from reviewing the benefit system, the taxation system, and it's like a cross-governmental policies that have to be introduced everywhere to make sure we have more equality and every citizen in the area and in the country has the chance to a happy, healthy, dignified life.
Thank you. David.
I mean, again, where do you start? I've got a list as long as my arm of things that I would want to address in this area. I think for me, I would go for the NHS and our hospital and our health system in this area. It is broken at the core. We're in the middle of a waiting list crisis, and yet we hear of a ward being closed down at our local hospital and more staff being made redundant. And yet, despite the fact that there's about 185,500 people on waiting lists in our NHS trust alone. Now, if we've got a sick nation, if we've got a sick city, how are we going to do everything else that we want to do to help rebuild this country? How are we going to rebuild our economy? How are we going to get more people into employment? How are we going to help people trained to be teachers and improve education? So for me, it's getting the NHS fixed. That's my big priority. Getting Southend Hospital performing.
Thank you. Stephen.
Biggest challenge? Well, the problem is I'm coming from a school governor, and I'm a family court magistrate, but I've never been an MP. I think the only person here who can claim that is Anna. So I would like to not start with the biggest challenge first, because I would not likely deal with it very well. But if you make me your MP, the first thing I'll be doing is working with other MPs in the Parliament to immediately put in independent measuring of sewage coming into our waters. And that is something I would go for straight away, because I think that's something that could be achievable. It'll help me kind of cut my teeth as your local MP. And then I'll be reporting back to you daily, if not weekly. I live here, I'll make sure you know what's going on, and I'll make sure you understand the system, because I'm sure, there's the wave, 10 seconds. So that's the biggest challenge. I would agree with David. Currently, as I said, junior doctors are going on strike this week. It's bad.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Peter.
Well, we've listened this evening, and everybody's been saying we need more of this, we need more of that, we need more money. Why do we need more money? Because we want better services. How are we going to get it? We're going to grow the economy. Southend has got to be an entrepreneurial, vibrant place to live and work. We've got some fabulous small businesses. We've got to encourage them. They are going to be the driver for our economy, our economic growth. And quite frankly, I think we've got to have policies in place that encourage hard work, reward it, and ensure that we do get a growing economy. Things like corporation tax. Why can't it be reduced? Why can't we actually have a situation whereby the drivers in our economy are encouraged to keep more of the money that they make? So I think all the things that people have talked about need money. We need a growing economy. That would be my priority.
Thank you. Hannah.
Thank you. So the top priority is to make Southend the best seaside city in the country, and I believe we can do it. I believe we need to have a world-leading venue for our world-leading Music Man project, a multifunctional concert hall that all our brilliant choirs can perform in. I believe we need to champion the new fishery that's going to start, get the levelling up money down into Old Leigh Port. I believe we should talk up our brilliant NHS and actually thank Andrew Pike and his team for the fantastic work they've done at Southend Hospital, and talk up all the investment that we're going to get into it. We're going to stop the sewage discharges into our estuary. But my challenge is children. Children are 20% of our population. They are 100% of our future. And I really worry about the social media, the grip that social media has got on our children and its impact on their mental health. And that's my biggest challenge.
Thank you. So we're going to move on swiftly to a question from Sylvia. We think that's how her name's pronounced, a different spelling to what we used to, but there you go. Sylvia has got a question about local transport. What would the candidates do to ensure that we have a more dense, frequent, reliable and affordable public transport network fit for a city? David.
So, two simple policies that the Labour Party will bring in if we get into government. Firstly, as rail franchise come up for renewal, we won't renew them. We will bring the rail networks back into public ownership so that we can have fairer, simpler, transparent ticketing and better services across this country. The second thing is bus services, and it's something I hear so much in areas across the city, in areas of St Luke's, in Prittlewell, in Eastwood, in Belfast as well, is the lack of bus services and the fact that so many services have been cut. Yes, we have got one back, but there's still a large number that have been cut. Labour's policy will be to bring bus services into the control of the local authority and have local people having a say in terms of where those bus services go. And I'm really keen to make sure that happens in this city so that we have control of where our buses are and how they operate.
Thank you. Stephen?
Privatisation has been the scourge of our society, and privatisation is a code word like woke. What it really means is take money from the public, give it to private business, small numbers of private business, and then a lot of that goes out of the country. So let's say, for example, you've got a road and there's a lot of people on that road who need a bus. Well, the company who makes money isn't going to prioritise them if they're not going to make a profit. A service prioritises the people, not the profit. Do you understand? So say you've got two roads and they go, well, there's only one person on that road. We're not going to put a bus down there, you know? But if it's a service, yes, you know? It doesn't matter how much profit they're going to make. It should matter how good of a service is required by the city. Okay? And I think that fundamental problem is why we've sewage in the water. Is that the hand up? 10 seconds. That's also the reason why our hospitals are collapsing. It's also the reason why our bus services are collapsing and our local authorities are collapsing. People before capitalism. I'm finally getting that.
Peter?
Well, again, we're getting back more investment. Where's this money coming from? Where is this money coming from? And it gets back to growing the economy. And also, can I actually raise the question? The C2C line has been regarded as the best line in the country in terms of punctuality. They've expanded their sort of carriages just recently. They've put on more services. So let's actually sort of question, have we got bad public transport services in this town? I don't know. I don't believe that we have. I believe that we've got good services.
Thank you. Thank you. Anna?
Buses, buses, and more buses. On the doorstep, the thing that people tell me most of all is that the majority of the buses in our city go from the west to the east and then from the east to the west. And a lot of our elderly folk want to go south. They want to go to the seafront. And why shouldn't they? That's what, it's so good for us. We've been talking, it's so good for people's mental health. So I want us, and a city should have a good integrated bus route. So where have I got with this? Well, I've got a couple of bus routes reinstated. It's nowhere near enough. I've got the number 3 reinstated, but it's once every 2 hours. It needs to be once every half an hour. I've got the 21A reinstated so that people can get back and forth from the hospital. I thought the hospital was the first priority. I've got £1 million from the bus minister into Southend City Council for buses. Where are the new buses? So there is money. It's got to be spent wisely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Tilly?
Have we got a good functioning public transport system? I would say the answer is no. We might be able to get into London by train from Southend reasonably well, but thinking of getting to Manchester, if you don't book it in advance, it might cost you £250, whereas you can fly for £20. And that's just not right, because that's so polluting. So the answer to that is, as was already said, bringing the train services back into public ownership. With regards to buses, of course all the private bus companies want to go along London Road because that's where most people go, but we need buses going elsewhere across the city to stop people having to rely on cars so much. So I would want to see the bus services under control of the council again as well, to be run not for profit but for the actual need. And finally, what hasn't been said yet, I would want to see investment into an active travel network which includes good safe walking routes, good safe cycling routes, to allow people to get where they want to go to safely and healthily.
Thank you. I'm going to squeeze in this last question before we welcome back our other candidates to share their reflections on anything that we've discussed so far. And this question, I should say, there was another question that we were very tempted to ask about accountability and how you would continue to listen to constituents' concerns going forward, recognising that nights like tonight are really positive, but we don't want this to be the end of the conversation with whoever is elected. But instead we've asked this question, and this is a question from a 16-year-old. Now, again, that might be controversial. A 16-year-old is not going to be able to vote this time around in this election, but we think it got to the heart of a lot of what people were asking, and it says this. Ernest asks, distrust of politicians is at an all-time high in the UK. Why should we trust you and your party? Stephen.
My party have broken promises. We broke the promise not to up education fees for students. We broke promises by going into coalition with the Conservatives. We've made mistakes. We've done things badly. We've done things wrong. And I think, we've all made mistakes and we've done things wrong. Now, there's no point pretending, like, let's say if I do something wrong to my darling wife over there, like I ate her picnic bar last week, I just have to own up to it. That was her picnic bar. I know it was her picnic bar. I ate it. I shouldn't have eaten it. What did I do? I did something about it. I did go out and buy more picnic bars. I gave it the picnic bar. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to trust somebody who has done something wrong, it's very hard to rebuild that trust, right? And the only way you can rebuild the trust is doing the right thing, okay? And there's very good reason. That's the 10 seconds. We've got lots of good reasons not to trust our politicians over the last, say, 25, 50 years. I'm not pointing my fingers at any particular party.
Thank you.
I don't know if that was any good.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Peter.
Well, I think this goes back to some of my opening remarks. I'm not a politician. I'm standing here because I believe that reform represents real radical change. And I think it represents change away from the mainstream parties. I think it actually pushes down real opportunity for the people of this country. And all I can say is I think we've had enough of career politicians. Give people like myself a chance, somebody with common sense who's rooted in the community. And quite frankly, I'm not interested in climbing the greasy pole. What I'm interested is doing right for you.
Thank you. Anna.
Yeah, well, I think it starts with listening, and then I think it's about doing what you have said you are going to do. And if you don't succeed in all of those things, being honest that you haven't yet succeeded. So going back to what I said at the beginning, I've had my 3 priorities. Upgrading the hospital. I've made a big start on that project with finding this, what was 118 million, now it's 110 because 8's already going into rebuilding the A&E. Other MPs told me not to do that. They said that money should have come here years ago. They said it's gone, Anna. It would have gone somewhere else. Don't do that. You'll make yourself look silly because you'll promise something and you won't be able to deliver it. I said, no, that is money that should come here for my residents. And so I think part of it is doing what, but it's not finished yet. So I'm being honest. Second thing is I think Rishi Sunak is an honest person. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I've got to be allowed to finish that, Steve.
Oh, Anna, you're breaking my heart. I can't let you finish. I'm so sorry. But do you go and find Anna afterwards and find out the end of that sentence? That would be great. Tilly.
Thank you, Ernest, for that great question and also for getting engaged, even though you're not at voting age yet. First thing I want to say, if I was to become your MP, or any Green MP will advocate for the voting age to be lowered to 16, because we think that 16-year-olds should have the agency to take an active part in policy and politics. Secondly, distrust of politicians, to get back to your question, I can totally understand it, because we've had a long time of people making promises and not holding their promises, and in fact working to their own benefit, and it's got to stop. And that's why, and obviously I'm biased, I'm Green, and I want to see more Greens in government, but voting Greens into government will mean that we'll be able to hold the other parties to account. So that is definitely something to consider. Thank you.
David.
Do you know what? I'm not surprised this question's been asked, because you just have to sit there and look at the news, and there's so much distrust of politicians, and has been for so long now. We've got to change the culture within Westminster. We have to change the culture of how politicians behave, 100%. Like Tilly in our manifesto, we will lower the voting age to 16, which is great for Ernest. But, well, not now, but it will be great for 16-year-olds in 5 years' time. Look, I think it's all about transparency and honesty, and it's about visibility. It's about being available and being held accountable by your residents. It's about residents being able to access you so that they can build trust in you and get to know you. That is so important to me. That's how I worked when I was a councillor, and as your MP, that's exactly how I would work here. I'm a person of integrity and honesty, and I believe we need more politicians with those same characteristics.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the questions that we wanted to ask today, and I just want to thank you all for the discipline that you've had in keeping to time and to resisting speaking to one another's points. It really is greatly appreciated. Please, can we give them a round of applause as they take to their seat? Would you go back to the seats down there? If you're able to take your seats back down the front, I'm going to invite, and I am acutely aware that having given you all an hour and 10 minutes or an hour and a half to these questions, I'm about to give 90 seconds to our three other candidates to address any of the questions that they've heard tonight. I understand that is not a fair thing for them, but nevertheless, we wanted to ask them to share something that they were just desperate to address. So, with all humility, thank you for your patience in tonight. And Lara, would you like to come up first and share your thoughts?
I'd just like to say, since 2020, our society has been thrown into disarray. We have a generation of children who were isolated during that period and given screens and phones and pads, which we now know that is causing mental health problems in our kids and increasing antisocial behaviour. So we really want to look into the screen time for children and what's happening to our children at the moment, because it's really had some bad repercussions. Also from 2020, with regards to poverty, we were plunged into economic crisis, made worse by 14 interest rate rises, hammering the public's rents and mortgages. Our food prices have trebled, and this has driven our people into poverty. I believe that the government needs to go to the corporations and the banks and the utility companies to stop charging us ridiculous amounts. Our local council's funding was also cut by 50% 10 years ago to pay down the deficit, and all of our services have been eroded. I think we just need to go right to the top so we can sort out the economy from there. Everybody's got really good ideas, but with a 14% rise in interest rates and your mortgage going up by £500 to £1,000 a month, is just squeezed us even more after the economic problems after lockdown. And just one other thing I want to say while I'm here is Southend is due to be a smart city by 2050, and we at the Heritage Party want to know what that exactly means, and we will stop anything that is going to bring in ULEZ or digital ID or social credit system. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to come and share some final thoughts? Tom Darwood?
There is this booklet which I've written, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. I've entitled the Commemoration of Queen Elizabeth II with a proposed Royal Arboretum sited right opposite Stonehenge. For this simple reason, to show how humanity has progressed from the Stonehenge era to where we are now to enjoy all the facilities of modern 21st century life. And I believe that began with that figure which we call Christ. The church has never recognised, which is my duty and tremendous task, because I've been faced with opposition all the way along for 22 years. I'm saying simply to the church, look out with a broader perspective. There is a creator, but he acted beyond Christ to give us understanding of how to deal with life through arts and science. This is a wonderful booklet. Look at my website, tomdarwood.com. Ask for this booklet. It commemorates those who died in the pandemic as first in line to be presented with an opportunity to plant a tree in their memory so that there's something tangible to remember this fantastic pandemic which was overcome by science and art, the culture which we were subjected to during that regime. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Robert, would you like to come and join us?
All right, well, frankly, I've got a bit too much to say. Somebody seems to have left something?
It's mine, it's fine.
Oh, sure. Okay, thank you so much. First thing, I've really got too much to say. COVID, I did COVID with the government and again told the judge when, where, why, how many people it would do, a percentage it would do on the public sector borrowing requirement, how long it would take, the fact that Southend Hospital will be the only striking hospital in the country. I've got the PPE. It'll take a number of minutes because it's a long way to walk. As for Southend Council being good, there's been Panorama documentary because they weren't. With trading standards, what they did in terms of pricing, there has been numerous things locally. You had Grenfell locally all the way along the street because you had opposite the City Hall, because you had plastic sheeting. It could go up at any time, it was like liquid napalm, and you'd get an Australian bushfire all the way through. So Grenfell was avoidable, and I avoided that in Southend. With regards to what goes on in a hospital, well, they've attacked me multiple times, physically and sexually in front of witnesses. They don't care because they're beyond accountability. The system is not just.
So there is only one more thing to do. Thank you very much for all of the candidates. Last time we did this, it was a winter election, and we'd been doing a campaign with the church called it's called Love, Pray, Vote, about loving our neighbours, about praying for the towns and the cities in which we live and for its well-being, and using our vote for all the reasons that you've heard today. Being a winter election, it became known as Glove, Pray, Vote, and we gifted each of the candidates with a pair of gloves because being in the middle of the winter, we thought it might be a fun gift to give them as they're knocking on all your doors as they're going about. Now, I don't know about you, but I am roasting in here, and I'm sure you're all very keen to get out, so we're not going to gift you gloves this time around. But we do have some bags down here that I'll come and give to you afterwards for the sake of time, that has some sun cream in it. It has some after sun in it. It has, because we're near the end of the campaign, you've not got a lot longer left. It's got a voucher for an ice cream at Rue's Waffles just down the road. And it has a voucher for 10% off shoe sole repair for all of those things. And that is a gift that we're offering all 10 of the candidates. And it's a bit of fun, but in all sincerity, we are so desperately grateful that you're willing to put yourselves forward in this way. Much of the questions that we've asked today don't necessarily reflect the views of the church. Certainly many of the answers probably don't reflect the views of the broad church either. But we are delighted to offer a space where these questions can be asked and you can have your best stab at answering them in the time that we've got. I am more educated than I was before I came. I hope and I feel certain that the rest of us feel that way as well. And it is my desperate hope and plea to you all to go out next Thursday and use your vote for the betterment of this town, this city, our wider country and the world at large. The decisions that are made by those in power will impact the poorest and most marginalised in this place and across the world. And the very least we can do is give our considered vote in those circumstances. So thank you very much to all the candidates. Thank you all for coming. If you wouldn't mind just staying in your seat, Gaz wants to take one photo with the candidates in front of you. You know, we have a few photographers and people covering it. Have we been recording this, David? We've been recording this, so we're going to upload the video of today onto YouTube probably tomorrow. Keep an eye on Leigh Road Baptist Church's social medias for that, and share it with your friends and your family so that they can benefit from the answers to the questions that you've all benefited from today. Thank you so much for all your time and attention. God bless you. If the candidates wouldn't mind just coming down to the front, we'll just take a quick photo.
Of course, yes. Okay.
Yeah, just everybody go. Bunch in as much as you can. Come forward to this end. As you direct us.
And you can go to your right a little bit. Come in slowly. That's great. If you could all bunch in. It's fantastic. It's quite